Hello my beautiful hammerheads and welcome back to another Malifaux Monday. So we have arrived at the rulebook of the first edition and I'm going to separate this into two parts because one part is why I have chosen the short story of Philip Tombers last week to narrate, as his journal has a greater role in all of this. First of all, his journal entries are in the rulebook, and this is the topic for right now, so no narration, just the snippets of his journal. And next week, also no narration because there is just too much. But his journal, again, is very important to the Malifaux storyline of first edition as of right now. So, the snippets are all a little bit of world building, which I love. The first one is about guild scripts, or guilders is the paper currency. There is the ram's head, so the ram is the guild symbol on one side, and a woodcut of the governor general on the other side. Earthside currency, so dollar, euros, or anything like that, is useless in Malifaux. The guild provides a certain amount to everyone who ventures to Breachside, however, not enough to live by the books. So you have to do shady stuff to get around. Then we have Ringside. Ringside, if you want to see a real boxing match, you have to purchase tickets for the Ringside, organized by the owner Jacob Samuels. Maybe important for later, I don't know. It is famous for clean and honest competition and the quality of the events. Sometimes even the Governor General visits those matches. And oh, before I forget, I do this chronologically, not in logical sense, because there is another entry for Ringside later on. But yeah, sorry. Then we have Chastity. It's a small town just 2 weeks of travel away from the city of Malifaux. It is unknown what happened to the original inhabitants. Hints were found that the people had to flee on short notice. One day, after settling in, those people vanished as well. Then we have Soulstone Gin. Created by a failed mage, let's just call him Carl. This is my name for him. On a drunk day, he had an active soulstone smaller than a pebble in his possession, and in a bar he was challenged that the contender could drink more than Carl, and wagered the stone against some scrip, because he needed money. So Carl pushed it further and dropped the stone in the drink. So both of the drinkers started to glow, speaking in tongues, and lightning danced in their hair, but Carl was a mage again. So another use for Soulstones. Then we have the Miners and Steamfitters Union, or short M&SU, which is important for the story later. Evolved from the Railroad Union, which constructed the railway lines that led into Malifaux, became a powerful political force, is self-sufficient and looks after its workers. Dr. Victor Ramos built the office in the Hollow Marshes. It is rumored that Ramos had connections to the criminal arcanists, but it was difficult for the guild to investigate due to the enormous public support for the Union. But it is true that the halls of the Union are arcanist safe houses. Then we have the Hanging Tree. Is just a short stroll west of the Governor General's compound. It is about 70 feet high, guarded by 4 deputies of the guild, and strange symbols are carved into its bark. These symbols are still not deciphered. It is a landmark which the guild used to orientate themselves after the second breach opened up. Here they found a single occupant of the tree, a man hanging in the branches, but they ignored it for a while as there were other important tasks at that moment, until the Governor General ordered his staff to remove the man in the tree. so they called him Jackdaw. As the whole situation was of course very creepy, the deputies took it upon themselves to cut the tree down to remove Jack. But they were unable to cut it down, and even burning it didn't work, as they built a bonfire around it and doused it with oil. All the while, Jack still hung there, swaying and watching. With these supernatural abilities, the Governor General decided to use the tree as a site of executions. Then we have Promise. In the year 112, or rather 2 years after the second breach, the town was founded northeast of Malifaux, the last stop for pioneers, explorers and fugitives. It sustains itself with the scrip of the people passing through and the prospectors north of the town, so they have their own peacekeeping force as the town is raided by outcasts, neverborn and resurrectionists. So we already talked about Soulstones a few times. Malifaux is the most important city for the modern world due to its natural resource. Soulstones, or ether was it called before they found out that dying people regenerate those souls. It amplifies magic. There is no known power which can resist the lure of the stone, and that is the reason why so many are desperate in their attempts to gain control of Malifaux. Even though the guild tries to overtake the whole Soulstone operation, others carved out their own small empires. Soulstones are separated by grades. Higher grades are used by sorcerers, lesser grades in alchemical reactions, medicine, wines and perfumes. There is also a wide variety in hues. The majority appears milky white. Another example is the Gorgon's tear, which was used by Seamus to resurrect Molly. And the hues are also an indication for the different magical properties. The theological and existential ramifications are out there, of course, but overshadowed by the second-hand market led by the harvesters who buy depleted soulstones and sell them recharged. So, do you remember Ringside at the beginning of the video, the legal boxing matches and so on? There are pits underneath Ringside. Beneath Ringside and their esteemed famous boxing matches, there is another darker fighting pit. Only the rich and corrupt are invited to these fights because they are to the death or against wild creatures. A nice business secret for the owner, of course. Only the outcast bishop knows that there is no surviving the fights. He's the only one who escaped this death trap. Because the fighters are lured in by riches if you survive 5 matches, and no one survived 5 matches as of right now. Then we have New Construction. New Construction is a district in Malifaux, which resembles frontier towns. Many firms started their business there when they kept failing to secure a real office in the city. The majority of the buildings were built using the poor quality lumber from the native knotwood trees nearby. New Construction is responsible for the image the city of Malifaux has as a dusty frontier town with dirty roads. The lumber industry helped the town of Promise and the people in the hollow marshes. So then we have the journal entry, Secrets Within. You remember Tilgran Kythera Do, the last words of Professor Hylen, words so mind-shattering that understanding them will destroy your sanity. Philip Tombers pondered on those words and the place he heard them the first time. His mind only able to think about that structure and nothing else. In his mind, his life ended as those words were spoken. Not sure if he's still alive or just a ghost haunting an infirm world. The structure itself is not of stone but of cogs and levers, inscribed with lettering unknown to humanity. 7 spires stood in a circle around that inky black water. After those words were spoken, the whole structure spun to life despite broken gears and mechanics. Heinlein being devoured by it to sate its unnatural hunger. Everyone witnessing the event felt their minds being shattered. The survivor Philip warning everyone to stay away from it, as death itself waits under that pool of water. Very important that Philip is warning everyone to stay away from it, because, of course, no one is minding his words, which we will see in the next video. Then we have the Soulstone, the Gorgon's Tear. A cursed relic, a soulstone with a green hue and the largest ever found. Acquired by Bernard Hughes, there is a curse on it. The curse kills every owner, and after their deaths, the green hue grows ever brighter. There are many tales about the mystical powers possessed by the stone, especially about the spirit within. Many owners described a sensation of being watched or being haunted. Molly Squidpitch, as she was still a reporter before she got killed, took a photograph of the stone, and in that photograph a woman with a wreath of serpents is visible in the background, which we'll also come to at a later point. Then we have downtown. This is the most secure part of the city. The guild is able to defend it for a prolonged period of time until the most critical personnel is evacuated through the breach if something should happen again like the first time. Short-term visitors are welcome in the hotels and restaurants downtown. However, everyone who is destined to stay forever is quickly thrown into the harsh reality of Malifaux, where the streets are not lit by gas lamps and the screams of the dying will be their lullabies. Despite all their best efforts, the guild cannot patrol every nook and cranny downtown, especially not the sewers, and so the Neverborn and the Resurrectionists stalk the shadows of downtown Malifaux. Then we have Contractors. Contractors are basically slaves to the guild, who cannot go back Earthside until they paid off their debts to the guild. The guild promises that it is possible for volunteer contractors to pay your debts within a year. A good lie, as you need at least 3 years. Debt contractors are having a harder time than their volunteer counterparts. With harsher work environments and less pay, the majority of those perish before they are free. So we have the Peacebringer, a revolver manufactured Earthside by the Harkin Manufacturing Company, is one of the deadliest weapons known to man back then. Equipped with a small bayonet at the base of the stalk, rigorous training is demanded by the guild of their operatives. Santiago Ortega is an expert with the weapon, but should you steal one of those firearms, the guild will shoot you with the same weapon as your punishment. So now very interesting is December. You know, the spectre in Rasputina's head. A tyrant from Malifaux's ancient past. One of the worst tyrants, a coven of sorcerers who grew to great power with the studies of magic, like necromancy. They subjugated everyone who would not comply with their demands and orders. He took pleasure in the death and misery of the people. Relics of his rule can be found in the ruins of Malifaux. Western north of the city in the mountains are old shrines dedicated to the worship of December. People fleeing their captivity of the guild congregate around these shrines, and they change over time, devolving into feral beings, speaking unknown languages, practicing rituals including cannibalism. Which will also come to play in the next video. You see that there is a reason why I have to make 2 parts. Everyone who runs out of scripts, well, is no longer welcome downtown and gets thrown into the slums. So basically the rest of the city. Only fools walk around unarmed in these not so secure streets. The dark mirror to Darktown. Everything is shabby, drugs are a common thing around the slums, the state of repair is nothing you want to think about, and gambling is as crooked as the streetlights. However, There are historic sites like the Eternal Chapter, the Blood Fountain, and unique architectural styles. If you have questionable records and you need to lay low, the slums are the perfect spot for you. Just be careful who might be listening to your conversations about the guild, or you will be pulled out of the river by the guild. And by the way, Eternal Chapter and Blood Fountain are very metal names. Then we have the library. The people responsible for constructing the city of Malifaux were concerned with science and learning. So the original builders of the town. So it is no real surprise that the greatest structures are vast libraries, and there are several of them scattered throughout the city. One such library is Dver's library, named after the one who founded it. Its close proximity to the guild enclave made it a prime building to be annexed and the perfect spot to research the history of the world breachside. The Rosetta Stone of this age allows for an easy translation between the human language and the one used by the former inhabitants of the city. A vast building, like every other building, as the original inhabitants favored large buildings. There are still vaults discovered as collapsed passageways are repaired and hidden hallways uncovered, like in Dark Souls. Then we have the ruins. Like the mysterious spires of Kythera, there are ruins all over the world beyond the city of Malifaux, spanning a variety of constructs for astronomical purposes and others as laboratories. These ruins harbor artifacts and books, and the value is without questions if you get past the traps. So, last two journal entries. We have the Hag's territory. Zoraida, the hag deep within the bayou. If you seek her, just follow the toads. No one knows how much of the bayou is her territory, and the closer you get, less sound is made by the environment until you are the only source of noise. Her hut is a little poorly built shack, which gives you the feeling that it is somehow alive, slightly moving and watching your every move. Here you can play a hand of poker for a boon of Zoraida, but if you lose, you will lose your life, as she will eat you. And last but not least, Relic Hammers. Used in mining operations, these hammers are enabled by alchemical catalysts. So if you should strike organic material, the effect is rather gory, like a thunder hammer. Unable to replicate the techniques to manufacture these hammers, the heads must be salvaged from the ruins of the city, so you get the idea for the name. Also, they are regularly seen on Arcanist black markets. Okay, this was a little bit of world building again. The majority of those journal entries is rather important for the short stories we will have in the next video. And I made it into two parts because otherwise it would be too long. Because there are so many short stories in the next part, but it is not worth it to make another two parts for this, and I will not narrate one of those because it would be just too much, and we want to go through the Malifaux story rather quickly. I know there wasn't really much narrative here. It was all world building to know a little bit of the city, how it works and everything. But we have foreshadowing in here. So if you should ever stumble in the future of this video series, just come back to this one. I have, of course, all the chapters down here in the video, so you can go back and forth if you ever need something. But yeah, rather interesting. I'm very excited for the next video, as the story is not tip-tapping slowly, but is rather on a jog, and it's really good. So a little review in here. I love that the story of Malifaux has a red string following through everything, and we get to know the world, we get to know the characters and what is happening here. Because we don't have 30 years of background for the universe. So, great job, Weird Miniatures. I love this. So, but what are your thoughts on all of this? If there is something else in the coming books like this, should I just skip it, or do you want this as well? Please leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section down below. I am keen to know what you have to say. And while you're down there, do all the YouTube stuff, because hitting buttons is fun. If you want to support the channel and you don't know what to say, just write Malifaux in the comments. Have a great day, my friend. Stay fantastic. Stay hydrated. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!